Well, whatever Sid read, he obviously didn't want. Find out where Sid went on that second row.
I haven't seen both this company. They only deal with heating about
All right, good afternoon, bird class. Welcome back. Some of you guys are really getting the hang of this coloring. I hope you enjoy doing it. And of course, unfortunately, we are at the point where I have to erase all of the coloring so we can start lecturing. Rebecca, do you not know how to do it, or do you just think you're not very good at it? Because I'm not very good at it. Okay, you should be able to, if you move your mouse to either the top or the bottom of your Zoom window, you should have a black bar show up with some icons on it. One of the icons is called Annotate. If you click on that, then you get a new black bar that has options for putting text or drawing or putting stamps on the screen. And you can use the format button for color options. Oh, somebody found it. You can highlight things on the screen. There are stamps. So there are all kinds of fun things you can do. Aw, not showing up for Rebecca. Oh, I'm sorry about that. That's disappointing. Okay. All right. I will look into that and see if I can figure out why it's not showing up for some of you guys. But sadly, I have to clear all the drawings. Okay. Announcements. As usual, we have a quiz and some short answer questions, both due on Sunday, February 20th before midnight. We still have some time before project topic requests are due. They're not due until March 27th. Some people have been emailing me and at least telling me their topic. That's fine if you want to do that. If you're planning to write a paper or submit a graphic novel, you can use any topic, even if somebody else has planned to do it. But if you're going to present something to the class, either a typical PowerPoint type presentation or a pre-recorded video like a TikTok, or if you want to sing a song about a bird, any of those things, then I am limiting topics for that, so we don't end up with 7 people talking about the same bird, which at this point sounds like this year would be flamingos. Lots of people want to talk about those. Okay, so last time we talked, I was starting to talk about magnetoreception when we ran out of time. So I want to talk about it a little bit. I want to repeat what I talked about last time and expand on it a little bit. So the Earth has a magnetic field, or more accurately, magnetic fields. And we use it for navigation, and so do birds. So if we're trying to navigate, if you've got a compass, it will always point to magnetic north. So you can always figure out which direction is north and use that to figure out where you need to go. Now, birds have more sensitive ability to detect variations in the Earth's magnetic fields. So they might be able to tell the magnetic field is stronger in this direction versus that direction. But this is north. They can always tell north. There is in one of the bird's eyes an area with iron. And so we think that that iron is important for them to figure out which way to tell about the magnetic field. We use iron certainly with compasses, for example, to help tell which way is north. And if you strap a magnet to a pigeon, they will get lost. Yep, they can get lost, which is surprising because birds are very good at finding their way around. Pigeons are spectacular at it. See, some people are still practicing their drawing. So in fact, pigeons are so good at finding their way home. There are people who race homing pigeons. Homing pigeons have been bred for their ability to find their way home and to do it very, very quickly. And they can travel 1,000 miles at speeds up to 90 miles an hour. And that's a pigeon. We all think of pigeons as, you know, the humble pigeon or sky rats or this kind of stuff. All birds can do homing to some degree. Pigeons, the homing pigeons are kind of the experts at it. They're not necessarily the best birds, but they're, of the birds we've studied, they are absolutely the best at finding their way home. They're much, much smarter than people think. We'll probably talk about pigeons at some point. They can do some seriously amazing things. They can count. They can't count very high, but they can count. They have been trained to look at x-rays, and because their vision is better than humans, they can find smaller things on x-rays than an average x-ray technician can see. Nobody's actually using them for that. We have computers that can do that a little bit better. How do pigeons count? Well, I have no idea. It's kind of like when we think about cognition being how people and animals actually think and do things with their brain. It's hard to figure out how other humans use their brain. And we can talk to people, but if I go, oh, my favorite color is red, while we both will agree that red is a color at a specific wavelength. So there are objective ways to measure colors, wave by wavelengths. And so we can agree that the same wavelength is red, but I don't know if what is in your brain is the same color that I see. There's no way to know that kind of stuff. And it's even harder with pigeons. We can't go, so do you have words for numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, or do you just kind of, can you just kind of tell, well, that one has more than that one. And so I'm, you're asking me to put them in order by how many are in each of these little boxes. And I can put them in order of how many are in each box, but I don't have number understanding. So that's one of those things we can't really tell exactly how they're doing it. Okay. And pigeons have been used in war. World War I and World War II specifically. And they would be used during the war for two things. One would be carrying messages from behind enemy lines. So somebody would sneak behind enemy lines, do some spying, and rather than calling, because, we didn't really have a lot of phones back then, they would strap a message to the pigeon's leg, release the pigeon would fly back to what the pigeon considered home, which would be usually like a military base or something, and they'd bring the message. But we also used them in surveillance. Why can't I type today? That's what this pigeon is doing. Look at that. He's got a little camera strapped to his chest. We didn't have satellites. So pigeons would be released carrying these small cameras so that they would fly over enemy lines, and the camera would automatically take pictures. And when the military got the cameras back, they could develop the film and see where the troops were. Mary.
Hi, are they trained to know where home is?
They know where home is.
Okay.
So to train a pigeon where home is, you keep it enclosed in a pigeon coop, and you feed it and you water it. And after a certain point in time, the pigeon's like, oh, okay, this is where I live. And then you can release it to fly around the local area. And once they've done that, then that is home, and they can find it again from up to 1,000 miles away. Which is just, it blows my mind. So a lot of pigeons participated in these wars, and a lot of them were shot down behind enemy lines, because once you figure out, oh, pigeons are flying over with cameras, we don't want them to get the information back to our enemies. A lot of times they ended up getting shot down. There used to be a war pigeon museum in New Jersey. I think it closed down a few years ago, unfortunately, but it's a really impressive thing to study. So, hey, if you're looking for a topic, here you go. Here's one. Pigeons are still used, not so much by military, but they're used for smuggling small items, including into prisons. And with that sort of situation, it's not so much that the pigeon thinks the prison is home, but the prisoners will feed pigeons that come, and then somebody on the outside can use a pigeon in the area that's used to going into the prison for food, capture it, strap something to it, and it'll land in the prison yard and carry contraband. Okay, and that is magnetoreception. It's a sense that we don't have, that birds do have. So that kind of ends the internal anatomy and part of the lecture. So we're gonna take a break from general stuff like this, and we're gonna talk about budgies, also known, oh shoot, I don't have budgigar. There it is. Yes, I do. Budgerigars, or in the US, they're called parakeets. Parakeet is not a great term for them. Parakeet refers to a group of small birds, or a whole bunch of different species. So I like to call these guys budgies, so we know exactly what species we're talking about. So when we talk about budgies, they were originally an Australian species, and in fact, there are still wild budgies in Australia. That's where they're native to. They are small parrots, so they are in the parrot group. This means they have personalities similar to the bigger parrots. They can learn to talk. They're not as good a talker as some of the bigger birds, but they can do this. But they have some advantages too. Compared to the big parrots, they have a shorter lifespan. So their lifespan can be 15 to 20 years. The bigger parrots, the Amazon parrots, the cockatoos, the macaws, their lifespans generally run between 50 to over 100 years. So this is a much more pet-friendly lifespan. We all hate that our pets don't live as long as we do, but to me, that's kind of a blessing, because then I don't have to worry about what's going to happen when I pass away. None of the pets I have now, I don't expect any of them to live longer than I do. So I don't have to worry about that. Unfortunately, the average life expectancy of a budgie is 5 to 8 years. Why is that? You guys should have a good idea of why this might be. Captivity, yes. Poor care plus breeding issues. Yes, 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 yes. Breeding issues and poor husbandry or care. Absolutely. And that's why you take this class, so that you can know how to care for birds and hopefully teach other people how to care for birds better. Okay. So their natural wild habitat in Australia is very dry and arid. So there's low humidity. And They are cavity nesters. This one is actually, there's a nest in here. And they are very, very social. All right, I'm getting ready to go on to the next screen. So this is a flock of wild budgies. You can see that there's probably a couple of hundred in this flock, and this is normal. Except during breeding season, you will see flocks of hundreds or thousands of birds. You see this with a lot of the parrots. And it's one of the things that make keeping any of the parrots, including the budgies, challenging for captivity, because they're used to being surrounded by other individuals. They're used to having a whole bunch of individuals that they interact with on a routine basis. And we keep them at home, often alone. And if we don't interact with them a lot, this is a huge problem with captivity. So I'm going to write that on this screen. Very social. They need companionship. And it can be other budgies, other types of small birds, or people who are home a lot and very interactive. So with the small songbirds, the canaries and the finches, you know, you get a few of them in a cage and they're fine. They don't really feel the need to have a lot of stimulus or interactivity. Budgies really, really need that interaction. And they need mental stimulation. Budgies have been domesticated for a long, long time. And we can start to see this in both behavior and physical appearance. So the wild budgies, they pretty much come in green. But when we get into captive budgies, we can start seeing different colors, like this blue one here, and sometimes different sizes. So this one on the left is what's called an English budgie. They're bred to be bigger than the wild ones. In fact, these other budgies are also a little bit bigger than their wild cousins. The American budgies, still bigger than the wild, but not as big as the English. Okay, I want to show you some colors, so I'm going to go to the next screen. So here we see a mixed group of budgies. We've got some green, which is kind of the wild color. We've got some blue, which is very common. We've got white. We've got piebald with both blue and white. I don't see any really purple ones, but they come in kind of a dull purple. You can't, I guess this one would probably be, that one might be a purple. Different shades of blue, different intensities of green. Here's one that looks all yellow. There's another one that looks like it might be all yellow. So there's lots of variety in colors. and they are very easy to breed. Which leads to overpopulation. So most shelters have budgies. They have them all the time. If you want budgies, you can go to the MSPCA and find them. The color variety is a captivity thing. The wild ones are pretty much the green and yellow. They're similar to this one over here. Yeah, if you're a wild bird and you live in a grassland kind of habitat, which is where budgies live, being green and yellow means you're going to blend in with the grasses much more than if you're blue. We also have, you guys, I am sure, have heard of puppy mills, right? Well, the chain pet stores have budgie mills, which are basically massive, massive facilities that breed large, large numbers of budgies to sell in the pet stores. And just like puppy mills, there can be a lot of inbreeding, poor breeding, diseases, poor care. It's not a pretty thing. So I seriously discourage people from buying a budgie at one of the big chain pet stores. Okay, I see a lot of people saying, yep, oh, did a project on it and talking about it in ethics. Good, I'm glad you guys are talking about it. Yeah, all the pet stores have mills for the animals that they sell. You're absolutely right. So the big chains can be very problematic places to get pets. Now, we talked briefly about hand rearing. Well, guess what? You can hand rear baby budgies. Oh, Fiona's got a good comment in the chat. It can be very tempting when you go into a pet store and you see an animal that is old, has clearly been there for a while, or is in poor condition, you want to rescue it. We all do. Unfortunately, what you're doing when you rescue that one is you're funding the supply chain that produces those animals that end up having trouble finding a home. So you can save that one, but by doing so, you're basically encouraging the business to keep doing the same kind of poor practices. Yeah, you're continuing the cycle. Oh, it is so heartbreaking. That's why I don't go to pet stores that have puppies and kittens, and I try and avoid ones that have birds if I can, because it's just nasty, 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 nasty. But as I was saying, you can hand raise baby budgies. They have a crop. That means less frequent feedings. So it's not as challenging as hand rearing finches or canaries. And you can often find small scale breeders who breed high quality pets and or breed show birds. If you are purchasing a budgie, if you are buying one, get a hand-reared one. Because that means that that person has invested a lot of time and effort into raising the baby. And so chances are they're a much more conscientious breeder. You're not going to hand rear budgies if you're trying to do it for profit. You're not going to make a lot of money that way. But if you just want one and you don't necessarily want one that's highly interactive, animal shelters, folks. Great places to get budgies. Now, there are people who, and you'll see this with any kind of animal, they get a male and a female, and they think, well, you know, I should breed these two. Or the two decide to breed anyway. And they don't really know what they're getting into. They haven't done a lot of research. I know with dogs, a lot of these are called backyard breeders. I don't really like that term because it implies if you breed your dogs out of your house, that's a problem. And that's so not the case. But we're really talking about amateurs who did little research. And so there can be inbreeding, there can be husbandry or care problems, including diseases. And so you really don't want to support that any more than you want to support the puppy mill type breeding. Generally speaking, these amateurs who don't do a lot of research don't hand rear, which is why I say a hand reared one is your best option if you want one that you're going to interact with a lot. Okay, screenshot time. Okay. These are show budgies. Notice how they've got extra feathers over their feet. They've got this big afro looking feather dew. They've got more feathers around the chest. Crazy looking birds. These are show budgies. And there's an organization called the American Budgerigar Society, which is kind of the place where, they're the organization, they organize shows. This is where the serious, obsessed people are. And you often find a lot of really high quality breeders in this society. And these breeders will band the baby budgies with the unique identification code. So these budgies will have a little ring around their leg that has information that allows the breeder to say, aha, this budgie was the offspring of these two, and it was born this year. That number is specific for one individual bird. So they can tell you everything they've kept records on. Typically, it is a metal band. A silicone band would run the risk that the budgie might be able to chew on it. Yeah, it's similar to microchipping, but it's more like banding wild birds. So we'll talk about that, I think, in the second half of the semester. But when people are researching wild birds, they put metal or sometimes plastic bands on the bird's legs, because you can do that when they're very young and not have to worry about them outgrowing it. So you can take baby birds out of the nest and put bands on them, or catch them in nets and put bands on them. And then if somebody else finds the bird later on, they can say, it's been 2 years and the bird's flown 1,000 miles. You know, you can get some kind of information that way. The bands on the legs have nothing to do about flying. Absolutely nothing. How do they not outgrow them? So baby birds, while they are in the nest, when they leave the nest, they are full sized. So they do all of their growing and they will be adult sized. Depending on the species, if we're talking about the small birds like the budgies, they might be out of the nest in 3 weeks to a month and they're full sized. So people say, why do we never see baby pigeons? Well, because by the time they leave the nest, they look almost exactly like an adult and they're the same size as an adult. So that's how they don't outgrow the bands, because their legs just don't grow once they leave the nest. Good comments, guys. Okay. I mentioned budgies are smart. This means they need lots of toys or mental stimulation. And they need them frequently changed. So you can take some toys out of the cage, put them in a closet, a month later, swap them around, so that they're constantly getting new stuff. Novelty or newness is important. Getting a new toy is more mentally stimulating than having the same old toys over and over and over again. And they like all kinds of stuff. You can see they've got bells, these little rings, those look like the bell toys my cat has. They like swings. They like these little ladder things. They also like to destroy things. So give them things to destroy. One of the best things is the cardboard at the center of a toilet paper roll, or paper towel roll. Yeah, they probably are eating parsley. That does look like parsley. That's a treat. That diversity in the toys also should be in their food. But if you ask them what their favorite thing is, nothing beats having other birds to interact with. And it's great to get out of the cage and move around the house. You got to watch for those potential dangers. You got to watch for windows, toilets, open doors. But even if you just like close the blinds and let them fly around one room, that is great enrichment. It gives them lots of things to mess with. They will do damage to your house if you let them loose. Books on the bookshelf, great toys. Wooden furniture, something fun to chew on. You know, you kind of gotta accept that if you're gonna have birds, you really should let them loose in the house sometimes, and you're gonna have to accept the damage that comes with it. Yeah. All right. Caging. And I will say this pretty much every time. Bigger is better. So this one's not bad. This is a decent size cage. Personally, I wouldn't go any smaller than this. But if you go to a pet store, you'll find lots of bird cages for sale that are like maybe a quarter of the size of this cage. And they'll say, oh yeah, this is a nice budgie cage. Yeah, no, it's not good. Again, metal bars. For budgies, you want horizontal bars. So this cage has some horizontal and some vertical. Budgies climb. And they will hook their beak onto a bar and kind of pull themselves up. And so they need these horizontal bars to do that. Don't use chicken wire. You can make your own cage with some types of wiring, but chicken wire is budgie head sized, which means the budgie can get their head through the holes in the chicken wire and get stuck. Remember, the spacing between the bars, the bird's head should not be able to go through it. You want a cage that's easy to clean. So this cage, you can see it has a tray at the bottom. It can be removed. And I've told you my newspaper trick. I'm going to remind you of it again. I've got some paper here. You take a bunch of sheets of paper, cut them to fit the bottom of your cage exactly. Put them in the bottom of the cage. Take the top one off. Look at that. You've got another clean piece of paper on top. When that one gets dirty, you take it off. You've got a new clean sheet. That way you're not having to cut the pieces every day. You can just take off the top one. You do need to scrub with soap and water regularly, especially the perches, food and water bowls. And if you've got one, a bird bath, which you should have one. And in fact, the perches tend to get poop stuck on them. So I recommend using bleach, approximately 10% bleach in water. And with the food and water dishes, again, if you have multiple sets, you can take a set out, have that in your dishwasher. You can run them through the dishwasher, most of them, and have new ones that go in that you can, you know, just replace the dirty old ones for new clean ones, and you're good to go. Okay, gonna clear this one. We've already talked a lot about breeding and how overpopulated budgies are. And we've talked about how to tell male from female. So blue here, that's a male. This one's kind of pinkish brown. That one's female. So if you want to breed, I would say you should have a goal in mind. You shouldn't just breed because you like baby birds. You should be trying to supply high health or birds with really good health, or you're trying to create or enhance some characteristic for showing your birds. You should have a motivation besides, well, wouldn't it be fun? Make sure yours are not related. You want to get from, if you want to breed, you want to get birds from different people. So you want to go to a breeder and you want to get a male from this breeder and a female from another breeder, so you don't have inbreeding going on. You want your birds to have a vet check up. Birds can get sexually transmitted infections, and you don't want your birds to have that. You don't want their offspring to have that. Find a mentor. Find somebody who already raises birds, who can help you figure out all the details of what you need to do, especially for hand rearing. You need a person to teach you this. You can't just watch a YouTube video and get it right. It's easy to make mistakes when hand feeding birds, and you can kill the bird very easy. Could I teach it? Probably. It's been a while since I've hand fed baby birds. I can't be your mentor though, because I don't live in Massachusetts. I live in California. I used to live in Massachusetts, and I started teaching this class at North Shore in person years and years and years ago. And so when I moved to California, that's when we decided that we can do it by Zoom. And while Zoom classes are not as great as in-person classes, it's hard to find somebody who can teach this particular class. You got to find a bird expert, and it can be challenging to find one. So I'm doing it for the foreseeable future. And I love teaching this class. This is one of my favorite classes to teach. All right. Wow. So that was a side, getting off topic there a little bit. All right. If you need a screenshot, now's your chance. Oh, you guys have snow? I'm sorry. It is nice and warm here. Mary, did you miss the screenshot option there? No. Okay.
No, I was just talking about the snow. We had a blizzard a week and a half ago, and then we got some more snow the other day. They said it was just going to be a dusting, and it turned into 6 inches.
Oh. Oh.
So, yeah, so it's crazy.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I did live in Massachusetts for 12 years, and I feel your pain. All right. So just want to remind you guys, there are lots of budgies available. You want to think about that before you decide to breed these birds. All right, so what happens if your budgie escapes? Well, you will probably never get it back. In New England, they can't survive the winters. Occasionally, people will find a budgie outside and catch it. It may never end up back with you, however. It's hard, much harder to find a lost bird than it is a lost dog or a lost cat. If you handle your bird a lot, there are some things that you can do to help recapture it. Yes, if you see a budgie outside, catch it if you can. Absolutely. It shouldn't be out there. There are Quaker parakeets in Boston. Those are feral and they can survive the winters. But pretty much any other parrot, budgie, canary, cockatoo, cockatiel, macaw, any of those birds, if you can catch it, absolutely do. Absolutely. If you live in Florida, Southern California, or other warm climates, there's a chance the budgie can survive. There are flocks of escaped or released budgies in Florida. And this picture was taken in Tennessee. I don't have good numbers for how widespread budgies are in various places in the US. The last study I was able to find was done in 1978. So I don't have up-to-date numbers about where they are or how many they are, but some places they can survive in the winter. And if there's a flock in the area, that flock can help them to survive. Of course, on the other side of things, that's not great for the local native populations that they're competing with to get that food, and especially nesting cavities. Okay, so that was our whirlwind discussion of budgies. Any questions on these guys? I like budgies, and I think that people who think they want a parrot, this is what they should start with. This is a much better pet bird than parrots are. Does the gender matter for a first-time person? Not really. Ideally, if you're wanting to get budgie pet, I would strongly encourage getting at least 2 and have them the same sex. Males are going to be more likely to talk, but if you don't want them to talk, it's not a big deal. Would these be recommended for children? I would say, again, young children and birds don't mix, but a little bit older children, this is a good option. I would strongly encourage hand-reared budgies for children, because if the budgie is not comfortable being handled, it will bite. And yeah, children do like to touch things a lot. I was thinking more, it's dangerous because kids, grab the budgie and might squeeze it too hard. And that would be traumatic for everybody. But I'm not afraid of being bitten by a budgie. It's painful, but it's not, on the grand scheme of things that have bitten me, it's not that painful. Definitely not going to do a lot of permanent long-term damage, like, a cockatoo or a macaw, which could break bones or maybe even remove a finger from a child. Definitely those would not be recommended. For children, I generally like mammals, and I like guinea pigs, dogs and cats, possibly rabbits. I don't have a lot of experience with rabbits, but you might be able to get some pretty good rabbits that would work really well with kids. I don't like children to have birds can be problematic because birds can hurt kids if they bite, and they are kind of fragile, so kids can hurt them. Herps can be problematic, again, biting, but also they can have salmonella, which can make the kids sick. I really don't like the hamsters and gerbils for little kids for lots of reasons. They, in my opinion, they're not great pets. Yeah, Rebecca's got a good point. Rabbits can jump and kick and get stressed and break their backs. So yeah, that is a concern. Absolutely. All right. So that's my children and pets. There's a reason most people have dogs and cats. It's because they're easy, comparatively speaking. All right, so the next topic, behavior. All right. Even the longest domesticated types of birds, the canaries, the zebra finches, and the budgies, are really not that far removed from their wild ancestors. When we think of dogs and cats, for example, cats have been domesticated for somewhere around 10,000 years. Dogs, the estimates run from 30,000 years to, I've seen estimates as high as 100,000 years. I don't know that I believe that one, but that's a seriously long time for domestication. With budgies and canaries, we're talking a few hundred years. So we can look at wild bird behavior to help us understand why our birds in captivity behave the way they do. And the first thing to realize is that wild birds are constantly looking for food. They have a very active life. So they have to have stimulus inside. They need something to be active about in captivity. And that can be those enrichment things, toys, things to destroy. We are talking about all wild birds now. We're talking about general overview of bird behavior with a focus on how it relates to captive birds. Oh, somebody is having horrible internet issues. I keep getting notified that they got logged off. It's the same person over and over, or same couple of people over and over again. Okay. I mentioned when we were talking about budgies how incredibly social they are. These are wild birds. The parrots and the macaws in the wild live in what are called mixed species flocks. Hang on a second. Okay. So we can see, let's see, that's a scarlet macaw, blue-headed parrot. These are all out of focus. I'm not quite sure exactly which species there are. Oh, it lists it right here. Blue-headed, orange-cheeked, red and green macaws, mealy parrots, chewy parakeets, all flying together. And here they are on what's called a clay lick. Clay licks are locations of exposed soil, clay or dirt, where parrots will gather on a regular basis and they eat the dirt. We're not quite sure what they're getting from the dirt, whether they're getting minerals that they can't get from their diet or what exactly they're doing, but they are incredibly reliable. So I've actually been to this clay lick right here, which is in Peru. And you go out in the morning, there are going to be parrots there. It's pretty much guaranteed. How many and what kind, that's going to vary, but they're going to be there. So think about this. You are this blue and gold macaw. This one next to you is probably your mate. You probably know all of these and have known these other macaws. They live in your area. You've known them for years, most of your life in many cases, decades. You also know these parrots. They may not be macaws, but you see them at the clay lick routinely. Now imagine that you're this blue and gold macaw and you are a pet in somebody's house. Even if the people interact with you, that's not the same amount of social interaction as wild parrots get. So most birds, especially the big parrots, do not do well without company. Because in the wild, they're never alone. Birds get bored. Boredom is a real problem. This is a black vulture in Florida. Black vultures winter in Florida, and they tend to congregate in relatively large flocks, and they get bored. So they literally will tear people's cars apart. So this guy is pulling the rubber off of this windshield wiper. Just because it's bored. No worries about the internet. I understand. This is especially in younger birds. when we talk about birds that, yeah, this is the hood of a car. This is a windshield wiper. The windshield itself is over here. When we talk about wild species that are known to destroy cars, vultures, cockatoos, and a lot of parrots will do this kind of thing. So there's actually a species of parrot in New Zealand that is really, really a problem for being incredibly destructive. And they were trying to do some road repair in part of New Zealand where these parrots live. And the construction crews were getting reports that people's cars were hitting potholes that had not been filled. And they're like, we put out orange cones so everybody would drive around. Well, the parrots were hauling the orange cones off the road to play with. They literally built bird play structures that they can put out where they're doing road construction to give these birds something to do other than pull the orange cones off the road. Imagine that in your house. Fortunately, that particular species is not kept in captivity because they would not do well. All right, so what can we do? What can we do for these pet birds? Outdoors, you can take them outside. Do not ever take a bird outside unless it is in a cage or leashed. This is a excited cockatoo. He's got his crest up. His beak's a little bit open. He's looking around. All his head feathers are ruffed. He's very excited. You see, this is probably like a cat harness that she's got on this guy. And she's holding the leash nice and firmly in her hand, taking this guy outside so he can get some enrichment, looking around the world. And you can train your bird. So people train dogs. Some people train cats. Birds should absolutely be trained. They need to be trained several distinct skills. Step up. So when we talk about a bird, I'm going to talk about Sassy. So I'm going to stop the share for a second. So step up. Here's Sassy. If I wanted to train her to step up onto my hand, I would take my hand and push up against her breast, causing her to be stretched up. Most birds will instinctively put their foot on your hand. And if you keep pushing up, they'll put their other foot on your hand too. Once you've got a bird that's going to be comfortable with you being around, it's pretty easy to teach that step up. You can also use a perch or a wooden dowel or a broomstick or, just about anything that the bird can stand on. It's an important first step in the training process. Birds should learn, go to bed. Birds should sleep in a cage at night. It's just a safety issue. Birds that are free flying, if something happens and startles them, and it's nighttime and they can't see what's around, they can fly into something, they can get injured really, really easily. So they should be in a cage at night. But you've got to teach them to go to that cage to spend the night. We talked about this with food. You find their favorite foods and you give them those favorite foods. When you want them to go to bed, you put that food in the cage. It's the only time these birds get those foods is when they're going to bed and going into the cage. That is training them to go to bed. Come is a good one. It can be tricky to train birds to come. And while they may be very reliable in the house, they are not going to be entirely reliable outside. So my first dog training instructor told me that the only dogs that she would trust off lead are service dogs, dogs that are working dogs. Other than that, she competitively, she trained dogs for competition, for obedience and agility competition. She would not let her dog off leash outside of a fence because there's no dog that's 100% trustworthy. And then that goes double for birds. Same kind of thing. If they're off leash, they need to be inside. We can do target training and clicker training. You guys probably learned a lot of this stuff. I think most of you guys have taken dog training. The same things apply to birds. A lot of the things you do with dogs, you can do with birds. And you can do with bear, and you can do with horses, and you can do with actually some lizards even. Pretty much any animal that can hear can be trained with clickers. Children too. I have not tried clicker training on children. That's an interesting concept. All right. Yeah, my cats right now are not trained, but it's my fault. I've been busy, but I have had cats that have been trained before. I need to get my new ones trained. All right, we are out of time again. So we're going to have to call it a day. Any questions, last minute comments, thoughts? All right, I will, that's entertaining, Danielle. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.